Because if you look at her, her life was like this. Her life was totally a roller coaster, and I know that she doesn't have a lot of threes in her numbers, and I understand all that, but her life was great, horrible, great, horrible. I mean, she had this incredibly wild swing, and there was just that place where she took her bad moments and she turned them into the good moments. So she took this terrible marriage and upsets that she had and losses and not feeling loved, and she decided to help those that also didn't feel loved, and she turned it into an incredible asset. And yet she was devilish. I mean, she said things she wasn't supposed to say. I mean, she would, she called the royal family on things that they didn't want other people to know. She had affairs, after Charles had the affair. She was testing that edge. She was not going to be suppressed. She was not going to be shut up. She was going to push that edge. So that's that reflection of a 3 vibration with all of its extremes. I mean, she was anorexic, and then she had to heal herself. And so again, her life was extreme, her weight was extreme, her death was extreme. The whole thing was just this like, whoa, kind of thing. So you have to think of who are the great neutral minds. Buddha, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, those are the great neutral minds. Now what's amazing is that Gandhi has a gift of 4. Nelson Mandela's in prison for, gosh, how many years was he in prison? And I'm not saying he did it perfect every day, but he worked at it. I mean, he worked at somehow staying neutral. Gandhi is getting thrown in jail for treason by the British government for life, and somehow he decides to stay neutral. I mean, it's a pretty remarkable skill. But the 4 vibration is also about inner peace and inner harmony. So when people have 4s in their numbers, they want to promote that. So obviously Gandhi had a gift of 4, so he wanted to promote peace, peaceful resistance. Nelson Mandela wanted to create peace between the black Africans and the white Africans. He wanted to create peace. So 4s want to create peace, but also if you have 4s in your numbers, you want to create peace for yourself or within yourself. So, but the problem is, did Gandhi live in a neutral time? No. Does Nelson Mandela live in a neutral time? No. So the only way to test to see if you're truly neutral is to put you in chaos. So you'll find that 4s have really chaotic lives. They have crazy stuff going down. I don't know if you remember that Gandhi movie that they did, Mahatma, and it was incredible. Like, he's doing the fast, so he's not eating, to get them to stop, the Muslims and the Hindus, to stop fighting. So he's basically saying, if you don't stop fighting, I'm not going to eat, and I'm going to die, and then you're going to be responsible for my death. And that crazy guy comes in, and he's all freaked out, and he had killed a Muslim child, a Muslim family, and he was all freaked out of the karma. And here Mahatma is dying, and this crazy person comes in, and he just stays really neutral, really calm, and just says, go find an orphan child, that Muslim child that was killed, and raise him to be a Muslim. That will complete the karma, raise him to be Muslim. But that's that perfect example of how to stay totally neutral in a very chaotic situation with a person who's at the edge of insanity. And so if you think of people who have that kind of skill, you can look at people's careers too. So you think of, who are the people that are the peacemakers? Therapists, social workers, occupational therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, communicators, marketing people, people who deal with negotiations and diplomacy, contracts, signing of contracts. So people that can stay calm in the middle of craziness are 4 vibrations, and they're incredibly handy to have around, because you need to stay calm when you're in a negotiation. You need to not react, you need to stay calculated, you need to stay open, and you need to flow. Then if you go, if we go from there, so we do the 4 vibrations. So I like to think of the 4 vibration as Buddha. So Buddha consciousness, that absolute, perfect, surrendered acceptance of whatever is in a moment. But 4s need to learn that peace is an internal experience, not an external circumstance. So it's sort of like, you have to be at peace in order to promote peace. You can't be in chaos yourself and promote peace, right? So I always tease the 4s and say that I could put them on a beach in Maui, and they would sit next to a person with a problem. Okay, and so it's really funny. It's just like they just think, how do I find these people? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Wow.
So then you go to a 5 vibration, and the 5 vibration is really interesting. And the archetype that I used for the 5 was Chiron. And if you know anything about astrology, Chiron is an astrological archetype. It's called the Wounded Healer Teacher. I'll tell you the story of Chiron because it helps explain the energy of the 5 vibrations. So the 5 is the physical body, and Chiron was a mythological character. He was a centaur, and he was an immortal in Greek mythology. And he left Mount Olympus early in Greek mythology in order to help humanity. But when the other gods got wind that Chiron, the manifestor god, was going to go help humanity, they thought, we got to stop this guy. I mean, he's the manifestor god in the physical plane. I mean, if he goes down there and evolves humans to the place of gods, it's going to be a little crowded here on Olympus, and we're not going to be able to play our war games. So they thought, well, we can't kill an immortal because Zeus will get really pissed off. But we could put him in permanent pain. Yeah, let's do that. Let's shoot him with a poisoned arrow that would kill a normal human, but because he's a god and an immortal, he won't die. And he'll be so consumed with his pain because his wound won't heal that he'll totally forget about helping those humans. So they trick Hercules into shooting Chiron with the arrow, and it hits Chiron in the hip, and suddenly he has this bleeding, gaping wound that won't heal. And he looks down on it, and it sort of backfires on the gods because he looks at it and he goes, "Wow, I'm a god with the skills and attributes of a god, and if I can't figure out how to get out of pain, there's no way these poor humans have a hope in hell of getting out of pain." So it's the story of the physician healing thyself. So what he found was he had to balance 5 things, and when he balanced those 5 things, the wound healed up, he had no pain, and he was good to go. But if he screwed that up at all, boom, the wound opened up and he had pain. So you can imagine he got really good at knowing what worked and what didn't work, right?
Yeah.
Because he got an instant feedback loop called pain. So what's cool about it is that he worked so much at this that he healed it so well that people would come to him and they'd say, you know, I'm in pain and I don't know what I'm doing. And he could read them like a book. He was like, oh, you're doing that thing I did 20 years ago. Oh, you're doing that thing I did last week. He could read them because he'd done all these configurations of pain. So he became a great healer and a great teacher. So when someone has a 5 in their numbers, they are either good at earth energy, they're good at healing and teaching, or they're working on that, and they're in the process of understanding that more, depending on if it's a karma position or a gift position, right? So, but the 5 things that Chiron had to have balanced is that his head and his heart had to agree. Well, I don't know about you, but my heart says let's live in Italy, and my head says we can't live in Italy, right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So whenever you get into dualistic thinking, your head goes weird and your energy goes off, and you lose connection with life force energy, because life is about dealing with the reality, okay? So dealing with earth is about you have to deal with what's in front of you. So one of my friend's favorite phrases is life is always about one more thing. Okay, and that's the 5 vibration. Like, you always have to deal with these, like, you know, your head and your heart, your head and your heart. You know, it's basic. I mean, you have to understand you've got that. The third one is that your intent has to be clear. Now, you have to think of it again as from a teacher and a healer. If your job is to be a teacher and a healer, you can imagine that your intent can't be to get your own way. Right? You're supposed to be kind of living on a higher level, and so you're supposed to be serving them. So it's no longer about me. It's no longer about what we can do together. It's about how can I give you something that will open you. Okay, so it's a higher vibration. It's like a stair step. So intent becomes really important. So it's not about I need to teach because I need to hear myself talk and feel important. That's terrible. It'll blow up in your face if you try and do that. You can't come from the place of like, I need agreement. Like, so, you know, I need to teach and you need to agree with me, and, you know, so we're going to agree on this. And if we all agree, then there's never a problem, because that's also not really accurate. But if the intent is to say, I'm a teacher and I'm a healer, what is it you need? How can I serve you? It's no longer about me. I take it out of the equation, and it's no longer about us exchanging an energy. It's like, I'm here to serve you in some way, and I'm here to open you in some way, okay? So intent is really important. Then the next one is motivation. And a lot of people think intent and motivation are the same, but they're not really. So the next one for Chiron is motivation. So if your motivation is to get even, right, or to seek revenge, right, that's not so good, right? So, you know, again, like Jesus could have said, you know, I want to run away and start a war and get even rather than let you kill me, right?
Right.
So, but that wouldn't have taught anything. It would have taught more about war than it would have taught about unconditional love, right? And acceptance. So, so motivation becomes a really key thing when you're a teacher, because what is your motivation? Is your motivation to make money? Is your motivation to serve humanity again? Is your motivation to serve your own self? Like, what's the motivation? Like, what's the driving force? And for myself, I learned a long time ago that I love my job so much I would do it if nobody paid me, and I'm so grateful that somebody wants to pay me, because I love doing this, and I'll do it at the grocery store. You know, I'm sitting in a line with somebody and somebody's upset, and I'll just start jumping in and say, what's your birthday? And, you know, it's just that place of, my motivation is to serve. My motivation is that if there's something I can say that will improve your day, I'm going to do my best to do that, okay? And then the last one is a little bit weird. The fifth one is don't mess with Mother Nature. So we've got head, heart, intent, motivation, and don't mess with Mother Nature is the fifth one. Now, how this worked for Chiron was that Chiron was the manifestor god in the physical plane, and so there's this terrible winter and people are dying. And so he's looking at this situation and seeing all these people dying, and he's thinking, well, shoot, I'm the manifestor god. If I just manifested spring early in the middle of this terrible winter, people were going to live. So he did that. But it screwed up the plants and the animals, and it ended in a famine. And so there's some things you just shouldn't mess with. Cycles of life and death and rebirth in nature. Like, nature has its own rhythm, and you don't get to decide, even if you're a god, how that flow is supposed to happen, right? You can't stop, even if you're a healer and a teacher, you cannot stop death. You cannot stop somebody's suffering. You cannot stop someone's karma. One of the things that I found really interesting as being a psychic is that I find it really interesting that there are teachers and different people that say that they can fix your karma. You give me $27,000 and I'll fix your karma. Yeah. You can't do that. I mean, it's like, I'm like, boy, I mean, first of all, it's an incredible ripoff, and then the second thing is that you can't do that. It's your karma. I mean, nobody else can do your karma for you. It's impossible. You can have teachers assist you and guide you to the dawning of your own awareness and give you huge keys and big pieces, but in my experience of life, not one teacher has had all the pieces for me. So that's what makes it so valuable, is that you know, they give you a piece, and then there's a point where there's no more pieces, and then you go on to the next person and you get the next piece. And anybody who's really worked on consciousness has been willing to move and try different things to feel the different pieces, because my kinks are my kinks, and my kinks are so convoluted, there's no way any one person could read it completely like a book. Now, there might be somebody out there like a Babaji that I've never met, but I've never met them. Okay, and I've been pretty good at like trying to find those doors myself. So it's that place again that as a healer, there are times, and as a reader, there are times that I'm looking at somebody and I go, this person's dying. Mm-hmm. This person is dying. And so in that case, I can't fix them from dying, but what I could do is I could help them do the steps necessary to uplift their soul to the next vibration. And so sometimes that's about forgiveness, like, you know, getting them to write letters saying, I'm so sorry, you know, to complete that. I can give them ideas on how to complete karma and release karma and move to a higher vibration, okay? So the 5 is this combination of all those things. So you can imagine if someone's got a 5 in their numbers, that's a lot. You know, that's a lot of stuff to be responsible for. And so 5 vibration is a little bit tricky because I always say that if you're supposed to be a healer and a teacher, you're not going to get away with very much, because you have to balance these things all the time. And so 5 sometimes feel like, gosh, you know, if I did what that person over there did, I would have been fired. And I'm like, yeah, because a 5 is like the Rock of Gibraltar. They're the person that everybody's depending on. They're the solid, stable, grounded, practical one, right? Mm-hmm. So 5s feel in their life that at first life is a crooked path, and they go over here and the universe hits them, and then they go over here and the universe hits them, and then they go over here and the universe, and so over time they get straighter and straighter and straighter and straighter until they're like a laser guided missile that is going straight in the bunker door. So 5s at a certain point, especially as they get older, they're just kind of like, this is what works for me. You know, I've tried the other things and it didn't work for me. Doesn't mean it won't work for you, it just doesn't work for me. And so